Hello, everybody. You're not going to believe who's with us today in the house. It is Dr. Sandra Weppler. Dr. Sandra, you're here today. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Doa. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure and a privilege.
I mean, we are really honored to have you here. I'm sure that there are so many people out there waiting to learn more from you. I know that you don't do a lot of interviews, so this is going to be like, a very special one for your audience. They're definitely going to be learning a ton out of watching this episode. Just in case there are people who are watching us who have not met you yet, Dr. Sandra, a quick idea about Dr. Sandra. So Dr. Sandra Weppler is a prominent figure in the tech industry, serving as a Google woman in tech as an tech ambassador for Canada, with a PhD in psychology from the United States and over 20 years of experience in B2B, SaaS technology organizations across North America. She brings a wealth of knowledge to her field. Dr. Sandra is the founder and chief transformation officer for UImproved, yes, UImproved Academy, and it's also called UImproved, a pioneering company that is actively shaping the landscape of business transformation in North America. She lives in Ontario, Canada, and her career highlights include developing the first agile framework for learning and development, impacting 18,000 employees, credentials in project management, change management, business consulting, learning and development, and executive coaching, including proficiency and AI applications. Dr. Sandra has held key positions in various organizations from startups to enterprise-level companies, and she has led digital transformation initiatives throughout Canada and the USA, focusing on business process improvement efficiencies. So actually, Dr. Sandra, like there's a wealth of information that you have for us here. And I don't know how we can actually encapsulate this in an hour or so, but I'm going to just go ahead and ask you my questions. Let's see what we can capture out of your wealth of information. Can you tell us more about your professional history? It's so much. Can you tell us more about your professional history?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised in Dubai, and during that time, my father always said to me, I'd like you to be, an executive assistant, in one of those oil companies, because in his mind, that was what he thought was successful, of being the idea of being successful. And of course, there's nothing wrong with being an executive assistant, but that was not my personality. And so but being an obedient daughter, I, said, sure, went on to do that. And of course, started to feel like, well, that's not really my path. So I kind of pivoted, started getting into sales. From sales, got into a little bit of marketing, then got into media sales and radio sales, radio and TV sales. And then I felt like, no, sales is too, it was at that time for me, I felt like it was too aggressive. And then I thought, no, I want something where I can be customer first focused. And I'm telling you, I'm giving you this background because, back in Dubai, there was no career counseling. So, I had to stumble through, I had to go through my own journey and figure out where the sweet spot is. So before I came to Canada, when I moved in about 24 years ago now, I was already, doing client facing work and being that, client's voice, or that, the voice of the customer, as you call it, was really resonating with me. And I thought to myself, God, I really like this. I like being of service. And this is, in my DNA, a very serving sort of person. And so I was like, I like that, and I want to help genuinely. And so what can align to my personality and my professional, career aspirations? And ended up into, learning and development, and then, into project management and consultancy work. And so in the last, I would say 10 years, my experience has leaned very, very, very closely or into, I should say, consultancy work. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself, it's been great. I've had these opportunities to work on these fantastic, projects, very, large projects, complex projects as a project manager. But then I also started to see that every single time I used to get into a company, the one thing that used to bother me was, why aren't people doing this? Or how can they not see the gaps? Like, I'm new in the company, or I'm in the company. What's going on, and why can't they see it? And
Blind spot.
sometimes I would actually talk to my managers and tell them about that. And, and it wouldn't go very well. Or I would, tell my managers and they would actually listen,
Good.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's really been my background. I've really not had, like a trajectory, but I think I fumbled and stumbled and kind of found my way through, though.
I cannot also like miss the part of the psychology, because once you say, I've been into so many projects and project management, and then your dear dad wanted you to go into this, oil and gas industry, you tried hard, it wasn't you. You saw a different path, and stepping into the project management path and all of the experiences you've been through, woven into this psychology, spotlight. How did that happen? And why did you choose the path that you've taken and not take the
Yeah.
first one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the psychology path happened because, again, something that is very in my DNA, I would say. My mom used to always tell me when I was younger, exams were coming, and I'd be like 2, 3 days. The exams are like in 2, 3 days, and I'm talking on my phone and giving my friends advice. And she'd
So
be
what?
like, get off the
Who
phone.
cares?
Your
I've heard
exams
of
are
this.
in like 2 or 3 days. Get off the phone. Stop giving advice. Like, start studying. And I just, it was natural. Friends used to come to me. People used to come to me, talk to me, and so I started to. I mean, when I was younger, of course, I didn't really take it seriously. But as I started to, get into when I moved to Canada, actually, very
Mm.
specifically when I moved into Canada, I was looking at, really taking education seriously. I really wanted to, was passionate about education, and how that translates into, organizations, into relationships, all that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I think I want to now get into my master's. And at the
Mhm.
time, my brother, he did his MBA, and he was, a person that has incredibly had a lot of, I would say, influence in my life.
Mm.
He passed away, unfortunately, about 4 years ago. But but so he did his MBA, and I was thinking, okay, well, I got to do something, not as a competition, but because he was telling me, you gotta now, continue your education, improve yourself, and I was like, yes, personal development, Sandra. And I was like, yes. And so I started looking, and I thought, wow, I think I started looking at the curriculum, and I was like, I
Mhm.
think that this is exactly what I want to do, psychology. So,
Oh.
so that's how I ended up in psychology. And then, of course, my brother Chris went into doing his PhD in IT leadership. And I was like, okay. He was like, you got to do your PhD too. And I'm like,
Competition is
"Eh,
getting harder.
he always raised the bar and the standards, God bless him. So I was like, okay, this is excellent. Let me think about what I want to do next. And I said, you know what? I already have a master's. Why don't I just go do a PhD?
Mm.
And there was so much that I learned about myself in the master's and in the PhD. I mean, it started with me. It started with understanding traumas. It started by understanding engagement. It started by understanding trust equity. It started, all of those things started to resonate, and it was an improvement to me as a person. For the first time, I was looking at me and trying to figure out, if I don't get this right, and if I don't understand how this works, how am I supposed to, help other people in their,
Yeah.
right? And so that's how this whole psychology thing, came up.
Wow. And how did it differentiate you from other people
Yeah.
coming from that kind of background?
Yeah, interesting question, because when I used to interview at job interviews, people used to ask me this question: "You've got a doctorate in psychology. Does that mean that you can read my mind now?"
Yes.
Well, that would be, magic. Nobody can read anybody's mind.
Absolutely.
But but there are traits. Absolutely, there are traits. There are signal signs, social signaling, as they call it. That you can when you're looking and when you're observing, you can pick those up. They call them flags. Intuition, things like that. But once a part of this whole journey is also, we do, when we're doing a master's, when you're doing a PhD, you also get to work with people. So you're working to get your hours in, your practicum, as they call it.
Yeah.
So and that's the time when you're sitting and actually, with the supervisor, listening in and stuff like that. So I remember the first time that I actually did this in my master's, and I had a supervisor that was actually at my workplace, at my college, actually, or the university. And she said, "Well, if this is going to be your first time, fasten your seatbelts." And I'm like, "Okay." And she said, "Also remember to keep a poker face, poker face." And
Oh,
I'm like, I'm a very
impressive
expressive.
person.
So that's going to be poker face. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that. So I was sitting there and I said, okay, I'm just going to take notes. And, I was very, very, aware of, how I was presenting myself. I didn't want to let, my supervisor, who's now actually a very close friend, down at the time. And we just went on, and we went like 6 sessions. It was just one session after the session. By the
Wow.
time I was done, I was like, "Can we go to Kelsey's and have some chocolate mousse?" Like, I got to reward myself
Of
for,
course.
for this time. And I realized what a commitment I was making. It was a serious time for me to introspect and say, wow, I am making a commitment to a person, whether it's, at the time, whether it's their marriage or it's their children or, whoever. And at
Mhm.
work, how that translated to work is I am also making a contribution in my workplace. And I always strive to understand, the fear response, the trauma and the fear response, because um, you have to build, trust equity in a
Yes.
company, or with high, you know, in kind of doing in kind of integrating employee engagement, right?
Yes.
And that could be a culture of employee engagement, or it could be trust equity in your to your manager,
Please.
or with your colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And
Peers.
with your peers. So um, you know, and people are afraid of the unknown, and they can respond in ways that, if somebody who has not had that kind of background, may
Mhm.
not understand, right? And even
Yeah.
with my background, sometimes I could not understand why
Oh
people
my
would
goodness.
behave in the way that they do, right? Human
Yeah,
beings.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that the edge that it gave me, Thoa, would be to be a to be more to have a lot of empathy, to have an understanding, to sit back, and not to get emotional, not to take things personally, and to really pull myself out and to get that poker face, put my counselor hat on, and go, okay, what is really going on, right? And then
Mm.
sit back and ask the question so that I can mitigate the fear response or the trauma response, because people are people and everyone has trauma responses
Yes.
and fear responses, and they're going to bring it to work. Those are, things that are just,
Will happen.
inevitable.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And like while you are in the process and you say every time I'm helping somebody, I realize the kind of commitment I have to this person. Knowing you, Dr. Sandra, you care on a very personal level to improve, people's lives, and using everything that you've learned in life in academia, you just like squeeze everything that you have learned and try to help people, and it matters to you. Why? What does it mean to you to help somebody improve their life?
Yeah, so really good question, Doa. I think that improvement is a byproduct of your value, of your value systems, the way that you are raised, your conditioning, your environment, whether you're spiritual, things like that put put this emphasis on improvement, right? You can go out and talk about improvement. But if you haven't done the work that is necessary to first look into yourself and have that, the introspection, the reflection of some of the things that you have gone through, challenges, the different people that have come across your path, all of the enriching, experiences of your life, right? I would say that improving someone's life involves like a holistic sort of approach. I take it as a holistic approach that addresses various aspects, right? Like you talk about human existence, you talk about going from basic needs to like higher level aspirations, with the ultimate goal of enhancing your overall well-being and life satisfaction. So when I look at improvement, I'm looking at it holistically. When I'm talking about, you improved, even the company, why you improved, right? Why that? Because if somebody turns around and says, what is, Dr. Sandra about? Like, what is her DNA? Her DNA is about building trust equity. Her DNA is about improving the experience that somebody is going to have, as an employee, as a client, right? As a peer, right? And the engagement part, especially when you're going through crises, whether you're going through crisis as a company or whether you're going through crisis as a person, it's the same thing. People are inherently people, right? And you have these challenges and you got to adapt your mind, because if you don't adapt your mind, you're not going to grow. People are afraid
Yes.
of change, but change brings growth. And so if you want to grow, you got to embrace change.
Yeah.
And different people accept that differently. One of the main things about improvement is embracing that growth mentality,
Yeah.
and if you can get past the fear and embrace the growth mentality, you're unstoppable. You truly are, so.
It's amazing how sometimes people will be afraid of even like positive change just because it's change. And that puts the weight on you as their counselor, as their coach. And then, but like, does that impact you personally on a spiritual level, or like on an emotional level, on a mental level? How does it, where is the driver coming from? Like which
Yeah.
level?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, yes, I do have a strong value-based. I am I do look at spirituality, take it very seriously. I'm also a leader in my community. So when you think about how significantly your values impact your culture, whether it's your culture, whether it's your national culture, or your nation that you come from, or whether you have lived in so many different countries.
Mhm.
And now, you've become a very different person from, where people have seen you, right? You've grown. Um, so where, for me, that experience comes from so many different areas. It's my personal philosophy, it's my transformative experiences, it's even the traumas that I've learned
True.
from, right? It's even the traumas that I've learned from, because you can get stuck in a trauma and you know, uh, you're stuck emotionally. You talk about emotional intelligence. I talk about emotional intelligence in terms of maturity,
Yeah.
trauma maturity, because trauma has, cell memory, it has memory.
Yeah.
So if you go through an experience in your life, you're going to tell yourself stories and you're going to speak in that narrative, and it's not going to change, and you have just stunted yourself. So if you are continuously learning and educating yourself, getting past the fears, you're reading, you're interacting, guess what? You're going to receive resistance, you're going to receive opposition, you're going to be rejected. But if you understand your identity and who you are and why you've been put on this earth, and that goes back to your spiritual values,
Mhm.
then it doesn't stop you. All of these just become educational experiences, though.
Exactly. Exactly. And because you've been into so many corporate cultures and you've interacted with so many people, and like what I'm going to be asking you about right now is actually the blind spot. I'm looking at the blind spot that nobody else sees except you or very few people. What is the biggest pain point that you have captured happening, this unseen pain point that's going on right now these days into corporates, Dr. Sandra?
I think the biggest pain point is, people conforming. It's the conforming to a particular perception. Like, I'll give you an example. For example, you have an HR person, and I'm not talking specifically about conforming to a perception, but I'm talking about conforming to a structure that is inflexible. So let's say you have an HR person, and they've been tasked to get a particular role for the company. This person might be, somebody who is an expert in AI. So, they've been asked to bring this person in because there's AI disruption as we know it. And this person is an expert, so they bring them in. Now, the thing is that, let's say they bring this person in as a contractor, and the person does their work, they're fantastic, excellent. And they have guaranteed that this person has so much more experience in so many other areas. Okay. And they're going to talk about their passion. So somebody, you talk to people, and sometimes people are just quiet, or they'll make certain conversations, but you tap into their passion and you'll see them going and talking and getting
But
into it. And their face lights up, and so why are people or HR or organizations not looking into that? Because if they tap into what that person is passionate about, that person's going to have life experience. They're going to have, organizational experience. They're going to have a lot of experience in that area, but they're just not, HR has not tapped into it because they put them into a box. This is an AI person, and that,
period.
yeah. But I know that some HR people, even when I've gone through interviews in the past, they have asked me questions. You know what? I think that you have project management, but you also seem really, good at change, and you're this and that, and then they would say, you're a bit of a unicorn.
You were.
So you know, we are going to hire you for this, um, but there are a lot of possibilities, right? And so, but
Totally.
when you get into an organization, they stereotype you, they put you in a box,
Yes, they
and
do.
and that's it, you know, and you're doing that job 9 to 5, and then you have to cultivate your passion and your career out of your career, your like your passion, your hobbies, and the things you want, you got to keep it aside. But the pain point is there's so much of money that is being lost
Yes.
because people, or you know, the HR or organizations are not thinking of re-engineering and looking at that person and saying, well, they did AI, they did really well. Is this person also, does this person also have this skill, and are they you know, do they have the credential for this skill? Because if they do, I'm going to move them into another project, which,
Yeah.
you know, which would save me thousands of, you know, it would save me time and money. And, but they just put you in that box, and you're an
Yeah.
AI person and you finish your project. And then if you have nothing more, you're done.
You're
Right.
done.
I was talking to a gentleman earlier today on the Elevate, and he is actually, it was such an eye-opening discussion, though, because he is the leader of the neuro diversity or neuro leadership
Wow.
for Southeast Asia. And he was talking about people that have neurodiverse, are not neurodiverse. And in like he was saying that, you know, that we look at people with neurodiversity and we think that they have a mental illness or they have some sort of
What
disability.
is neurodiversity, Dr. Sandra?
Yeah, it's people who think, I'm going to tell you the way that he said it. People who think differently because their brains process information
Ah,
differently from a person who is you know, I would say he used a word like neuro inclusive or something like that, or normal, like not normal, but sort of in that context.
standard, I mean,
Yeah,
usual
yeah, the normal,
with
yeah,
their,
usual brain wave thinking, I would say, you know. But he talked about how this has become a social stigma, and
ah,
how, you know, ADHD or dyslexic
ah,
people are sort of put aside, but, or, you know, autistic people put aside, but there are so many different spectrum. There's so much of education going on in that area that
yes,
when these people enter the workforce, of course, there has to be a different maybe approach in the
of
interview
course.
process, but they can be so highly valuable and
Functional.
such an asset because they have a different way of thinking. Can you imagine? You know, so that just blew my mind. You know, today it just blew my mind, and I was like, wow, yes, I realized that, I've understood it. I've done some, you know, obviously some research, but I really believe that, you know, if companies want to transform themselves, they're going to have to think completely out of the box in a
Oh,
lot.
is that easy?
No, no, because I mean, as we talk about, you know, and change management and things like that, adoption, you know, change of behavior, those are like the elephant in the room, which you don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But there are companies that are growing, like, you know, for example, in UImproved, I give some examples like Nokia, for example. You know, they didn't stay in with the times. You know, unfortunately, they didn't stay in with the times. They didn't transform digitally. They didn't transform their company. And, you know, today, unfortunately, they're not, you know, they have lost, you know,
Yes.
their edge. I mean, everybody used to use the Nokia phone, you know, BlackBerry, another one, you know, another company. I mean,
Yeah.
up here in Canada, huge, you know, huge impact on the business world. But companies like GE and Toyota completely transformed and brought, you know, process improvement in, bought the lean mechanisms and all of this, and they transformed. And today they are in step with bringing even
Yes.
AI, automation, and all of that stuff. So if you want to stay in a competitive edge, you got to transform, whether it's
Yeah, it's like
yourself,
mindset,
whether
flexible
it's
mindset.
yourself, yeah, or whether it's the company, that you are heading. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thinking out of the box is a big thing, and it takes the top tier of the company want to make that happen, because sometimes, and I don't know, but sometimes maybe the corporate politics, they do not want people to think out of the box, and I don't know how far that could hurt a company. It's like you said, it's just freezing them in a way.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies miss what I call an innovation incubator.
Yes.
You know, companies talk about innovation, they talk about cutting edge strategies,
Mm.
but in the in the olden days, I would talk maybe about 10 years, where you had SaaS, where you didn't have the SaaS cloud platforms and you had
Mm.
all of your software in boxes. You had research and innovation. And
Yeah.
used to be incubators. They used to be incubators to look at things, to get customer insights and things like that. And you had research and innovation departments.
Yes.
With everything that has gone on the cloud, you don't really have that innovation piece anymore. You have product people that are looking, but product people cannot stay in silos because they're looking at customer insights. Customer insights has to come in and talk about it. And if customer insights are not talking about it, change management people have to come in and talk about the impacts of all of the different changes that are coming in product releases and things like that. But before, there was a department that would work and be focused just on that, right?
On innovation,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
so if you don't have an innovative mindset, you're not going to have a competitive edge. You have to innovate because people are consuming information all the time. There's so much of noise, and if you're not innovative and creative, you're going to lose out.
And do you think that should be spotted right from the beginning in the recruitment process while the company is hiring each and every person in their teams?
Yeah, you should look for, I mean, I have done my piece of HR recruiting, worked at the Toronto 2015 Olympic Games held over here,
Yeah.
put together along with, the managers at the time, a talent, recruiting platform. And we had to put in, very quickly because, when you, when you are working, for an event that's going to happen in 9 months, you don't have the time to scale up at your pace. You got to scale up very quickly. 2 months,
Yes.
3 months, and then people have to hit the ground running and get ready because the games are like in 6 months. So,
Ooh,
yeah. So, when you talk about, finding those gems and, your onboarding, I mean, your onboarding, it
onboarding.
has to be so specific and has to be so engaging. That first experience of that person coming and sitting across you, asking them questions that have not been asked before, right? Not trying to put them on the spot, but saying, how do you think about this? How would you position this if this happened? And I know they talk about, situational, questions, but I'm not talking about situational. I'm talking about things that they've experienced outside work.
Yes,
Who are you, and why are you coming into this, in this place, and what is it that you can do that XYZ cannot do? So, for
exactly.
example, when they asked me the question, Doa, why do you want to work at the Toronto Games? I thought to myself, I saw like 20 people outside who were who were waiting to be interviewed for my position. And I thought to myself, if I don't come up with a sad answer, I'm just going to be one of them, right? So the
That,
question I asked them was, well, first thing I want to ask you is, what is your business problem? What is the issue?
mhm.
Why do you even want this position? What's happening in your world right now that I can support? What is your business problem? What is the issue? And they told me, and I just directly, without wasting any time, started talking to that. And I got the job, of course. But
Or
yeah, so I think it's, I'm talking about innovation. That's a piece of innovation right there. Thinking innovatively.
Wow, such a challenge. I mean, although we're in the middle of AI era and people are speaking of technology, but isn't it so intricate, like how these new innovations are replacing, in some ways, the natural capacity and ability of thinking,
Mhm.
creating
Yes.
almost a thinking crisis out
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
And innovation, a disability in a way.
Yeah, you're very right, because you have to, even with AI, you have to give it the prompts.
Yeah,
It's not going to prompt itself. You have to give it the prompts. So you have to think creatively and innovatively to give it the prompts in the first place so that it can actually think then and give you the automated response. But the
absolutely.
problem is, if you are giving it the prompts because you are creating, let's say, for example, ChatGPT, and you're the owner of ChatGPT, and you have put all this fantastic information, and the other person on the other end that is asking the question about, give me 5 tips on this, and this, it's going to spit it out, and that person's going to be great. I use it. I
Yeah,
But I've started to realize that as I'm using it, I have to be cognizant of the fact that I'm getting this information and I'm not really thinking too much. I'm like, okay, great. I've got 5 things that matter and that I can talk about. But I have to really look at that and think about
think.
how yeah, I got to think whether that makes sense, and put a piece of Sandra in that narrative, right? Put a piece of
Yeah,
Sandra in that narrative. And so people are going to get very, very complacent in their thinking if they don't take that piece of information. And of course, you have to give it the prompts, but also make it their own. They have to take it
yeah.
and their own.
Use it in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
absolutely. And speaking of that, you have been also handling a lot of activities outside of the corporate or beyond the corporate world. You have been, for example, a global keynote speaker and has traveled, and you've traveled like extensively. You are the host of Elevate podcast, featuring thought leaders in business transformation that share actionable insights in a very changing environment. And you're also like an Amazon best-selling author of the Dubai Girl, How My Life-Changing Journey Will Unlock Your Destiny. That's the name of the book. The Dubai Girl, How My Life-Changing Journey Will Unlock Your Destiny. You also featured you're a featured guest on TV, on several networks and radio shows across North America. So you have such a diverse experience, Dr. Sandra. And I wanted to know from you, where does your human self overlap with your professional self?
You know, that is such a loaded question,
Yeah, it is.
because I, I've always said to my husband that you see me and you get what you get. I'm transparent, I'm open. I'll have conversations like that with my boss. I've had conversations like that with VPs, with product directors, and I have had to learn how to actually, step back a bit, because I think that perception in organization is key. Now, if you're an employee, perception organization is very key,
Yeah,
because it can break you or make you. If you're a CEO of your own organization, perception is key, but you get to impact and influence and
yeah,
be more, give more of yourself, be more transparent. So I started off my journey being in the workforce or in corporate Canada, being myself. And um, and through that journey, I realized that there are some things that I do have to hold back. There are some cards I have to hold very close to my chest. And there are some things that I can say very openly. And there are some things that I'd rather not say or keep to myself, I think that's kind of unfortunate in a way, because we do spend 8 hours, 7, 8 hours of our day at work. There have been opportunities where I've had some amazing bosses and some amazing peers. And those are the people that you can chat with, off the record, or say, hey, let's have a coffee chat and
Yeah.
actually talk and just be yourself with. And then there are others that, you just have to be, an employee, and just, I have never ever been intimidated by a CEO or a director, or for me, because of I would say my spiritual acumen, I don't fear men, you know. Um, so even when I was young and I was in Dubai, at Cambridge High School, my principal, used to always come by, and he was from England, and he was called Mr. Batten, and we used to call him the big bat.
Ah,
The big bat. Like I said, bat. And every time he would come, he would, people would be like so intimidated, and I would just go up to him and I say, oh, hi, big bat, how are you doing this morning?
just in case you missed the nickname.
He knew that. And I would always go up to him and say this, hi, Mr. Batten, hi, big bat, and he would
How did
always,
he react? How did he
he would,
react?
he would smile and nod his head,
Ah.
I didn't really know what he thought of me at that time. I was quite a mischievous character when I was young. I think I'm still mischievous in some ways. You'd have to ask my husband and my mom. But I still have that streak, of mischievousness, I believe. But I only understood really what he thought of me is when I was transferring out, and I had completed, my O levels, and I was transferring out to do my O levels at the British Council in Dubai, because at the time we didn't have any universities.
Ooh.
Truly dating myself here, but so, but long story short, he gave me a recommendation letter, and in one of the, in that letter, he said, I have enjoyed thoroughly. I'm just paraphrasing, right? I've enjoyed thoroughly, Sandra, at the time I was a D'Souza, Sandra D'Souza's interactions every morning when she has very, when she has very boldly called me Mr. Bat, the big bat. I think that Sandra has got she's very high confidence, and she doesn't let anything intimidate her, and she'll do, she can get along with anybody at every level. And I think
Oh, wow.
that is the core. When I saw that, I realized that that is who I am,
And that's an educator. That's an
yeah,
educator.
I'm respectful of every person. It may be a 3-year-old child, it may be a 10-year-old, 13, or even 60, 65, 70, 80. I do not change my approach. I do not have biases towards any of those people. I treat them the way that I would want somebody to treat me.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Where did you learn to energize yourself and generate that capacity of giving? Where did you learn that?
Yeah. So that's an incredible question, and that's where I would say the spirituality comes in. um i am I try to be somebody that's not a fanatic in any way. I do try to keep a very open mind, because spirituality can, for somebody, it can be wonderful and enlightening, and to somebody else it could be a total deterrent.
Mm.
So for me, my energy comes from, spending time, you know, in my faith, in my community, and taking that time every day to connect, to reflect, right?
Mhm.
To understand. I have some fantastic mentors in my faith that have uh, really shaped, the way that I have thought, and some who have challenged, some of my belief systems. And so it's been a journey since I was probably 19 years old. And I have had some very enlightening and extremely um, life transforming changes. And as life has gone by, including, the death of my father, the death of my brother, um, my mother is aging, my puppy, who is 16 and a half year old, who's been with us we were just, myself and my husband was saying, like, almost as long as me and him have been married. You get to, you can, if you don't have that spiritual identity, uh, life can really crush you,
Yes.
and you can become a very bitter, helpless, and hopeless person. Um, and certainly, I have had my set of challenges in life, but I have to say that the energy has definitely come from my faith. Definitely.
Wow. And why do you choose to keep giving? So, okay, your faith has given you that kind of energy. This is where you've learned it. But why do you choose? Even when I've noticed you, like even when you're tired, even when you're exhausted, when you're, I mean, like what they say, when even when your cup is not full, you still choose to give. Why do you do that?
Yeah, I think I would say first and foremost, I've learned it in my family. Both of my parents, you know, have been incredibly generous, incredibly generous. My father went to Dubai in 1956, and he essentially, after a couple of years, you know, sort of supported my mother's entire family and his entire family. I'm talking about, and his cousins. So I'm talking about like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people.
Oh,
We got them across. Those people still remember my father, even though he passed away 13 years ago. They still remember his generosity, bringing them over. He didn't even, he worked for $300 a month and worked at 3 jobs, but he still brought them, right? And today their children and their children's children are doing incredibly well. They're all across the globe and well settled. So that value has been something that has been ingrained in me, the generosity of giving. And the other thing would go back to, I would say, would go back to my faith.
mm,
You know, I look at the model of what my faith, ultimately uh, is about. And it's about giving endlessly, giving unconditionally, giving without any bias, and giving, with love and serving. So, I model exactly that, so I, I don't have an issue giving. Of course, as a psychotherapist, at some time when I was practicing, I learned healthy boundaries. So I do keep healthy boundaries, but I don't have a problem, giving. I think that this is one thing that human beings have been hardwired for. And when they do give, when they give to their family, when they give to their children, when they give into the community, when it's, the homeless or the addicted, or, if we didn't have people who would give, can you imagine what the world would be?
boring. Yeah, it would be boring if people stop giving.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people like me, I think. I'm sure that are out there that are doing that too. And
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
what, that's what makes the world, that
Spin.
we can, yeah, and we can say, oh, okay, there are people out there that are passionate about giving. I'm just one of
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, um, what is the vision that you see at this phase? You've been through all of the experiences that you've been through, people that you've met, ups and downs. But at this particular phase in your life, Dr. Sandra, what is the vision that you see happening for you?
Yeah, so I want to say that though that you are one of those people that have impacted my life, um, when I got to know you first about a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years now, when you first reached out to me, it was probably 1.5 years ago. And, we decided to get into, the partnership for Trainers Box. Me, I was so uncertain about whether I wanted to, launch into this entrepreneurship, journey. Um, and of course, there were some real things that were happening in my life that I couldn't at that time. But then, every contact or every connection we made, you would always be like, why aren't you doing this? Like, what is
The
stopping
relation
you?
is established. I knew it was just a matter of time because
Yes.
the relation, I could exactly understand where you're coming from. It's for
Yeah.
me, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And so it is the patience, the encouragement, and people have to come to that realization. Other people might try to like influence, and it's good to be in somebody's ear and influence them from time to time. That's a good thing. And you did that. You never pushed, you never, suggested, you just gently, gently were, tugging here, there. And I was ready, but there had to be a point of no return,
Oh,
and that
yes.
point of no return came for me, a couple of months ago, where I was like, wait a minute, I'm hitting a milestone in my age. There must be more that I can do. I want financial freedom. I want to spend, some quality time with my mom, who's going to be turning 85. God bless her.
Oh, God bless.
Incredibly, a warrior woman, I should say. Totally amazing, so talented and things like that, even at her age. So, I said, it's time for me to do it, because there were two things that my father said to me before he passed away and went for his surgery. One, he said to me, I really trust you. And here I'm giving you, this, my will. And I've got 3 copies, and I want you to have one. And I want you to give, if anything happens to me tomorrow, I want you to give this to your brother and to your mother. And I looked at him and I was like, first and foremost, nothing's going to happen to you. And second of all, why are you giving this to me? Because now I have to deal with, talking to my older brother and telling my mother, right? Like, oh,
Oh,
my dad gave me this. But I knew that, it would be okay, because I'm just the messenger, just giving it to them. The second thing that he told me was pretty life-changing. And that's why the book came out, and I thought about it again a couple of months ago. And he said, I went to Dubai. I was 29 years old, and then I married your mom, and then we had Chris, and then, 7 years later, yourself. And I had so many opportunities later on to get into business and to live the life that I always wanted to live, because he came from a very small sort of village. And, but by the time he was done, he was a general manager. He had 4 homes, and so, so he said to me, he said, if you ever want to get into business, you've been doing that as a counselor for some time, He says, but if you ever want, he says, do not compromise on your dream. Go for
Oh,
it. Go for it. Go for it. He says, please go for it and don't have any regrets. Because if you fail, then okay, you failed, you tried. But
keep
you know,
going.
yeah. And so that, I think, a couple of months ago, when I thought about it, I thought, no, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I have the experience, I have the credentials. I've done a part of it when I was a psychotherapist. Um, and one of the companies that I had worked for a couple of months ago, I went into the company, and within 5 to 10 days, I was able to see the gaps so fast, so quickly. I was talking to the HR person at that company, and I said to her, this was the 5th day. She was just, she was in like an outside vendor for the company because it was a small, sort of a scrappy startup. And it was so interesting because she said to me, it's 5 days and you're already telling me all the things that I know and I've been here for a while.
Ah,
Well, that position at some point, because of the, subject matter expertise that I didn't have, and I didn't know, moving forward, how that was going to look for me. And this thought of what my father was saying, the milestone that I had hit in my age. And I was just like, if I'm not going to do it now, where am I going to do it?
yes.
And so, knowing that, hey, yeah, I do have my husband that's a fantastic champ and always has been on my side. We've always supported each other and pushed each other's, for our dreams and stuff. What my dad had said, in you and all the contributions that you have done in this journey, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I haven't looked back.
Yes, you haven't. And I don't know if I was trying to, when I was speaking to you from time to time, I was trying to ask you because I could see it. It was super clear for me. You just didn't fit into corporate, period. And then I just wanted to, I don't know if you've noticed, but like my question was, are you ready to spread your wings?
Yeah.
Are you ready to spread your wings? Because I could see it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it was like, no, I'm busy. I have people pulling me and then people need me, people da 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 da. Like, but then I knew the time would come.
Yeah. I also, one really important thing I did was I got a life coach. And interestingly enough, the life coach is the daughter of the person that has spiritually impacted me from the time I
Oh,
was 19. And this girl is her daughter, and she's a life coach. And the one thing she said to me on my very first session, it wasn't a session, it was just a conversation.
mm,
And she said this to me, and for me, it resonated. She said, Sandra, there's either action and your commitment to yourself and to your family, or there's excuses. You choose.
yes,
That's it. Either there's action or commitment to yourself or your family, or there's excuses.
yes. That's very real.
You choose. I was like, okay, I don't want to, I don't want excuses. It is. It
Yeah,
is.
it's not you. It's not you.
Yeah.
You're a woman of action. Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. So I had to just take a bold step, move on and say, as they say, que
So, so
sera.
so what does this vision look like? What do you envision for yourself? What is the
Um,
future
I,
fit?
I think, I think I have stepped out with a great plan. I have formally launched UImproved, which is a business transformation, very customer-centric business transformation company. I've done a lot of research because, doing a PhD, you have to do so much research and get
Yeah,
100 references. So research is not a big deal. So really went and looked into a lot of the top tier companies like Deloitte, McKesson's, and all of those type of companies, and what their models are, and what the gaps are, and started to kind of glean where UImproved is going to take the lead on. And I came up, nobody has come up with a framework. Nobody has come up with customer-centric assessment models. So I have a proprietary framework, which I call the next generation operating framework.
Ooh.
And that is very close to what people do in a SaaS B2B tech company, but it's more involved. And then the other two proprietary models are, it's called Elevate, which is also part of the name of the podcast. So Elevate, which is very customer-centric assessments, and Shield,
Wow.
which is again very focused on the process improvement part of the business. So took the time, put this together, and ready to roll it out. I think also with some guidance, definitely from you and your experience and our combination of experience in learning and development, for years. I has also come up with a new course offering, credentialing, which is going to be the very first, and the whole concept is very, the company is pioneering and shaping, what business transformation is going to look like.
Oh,
So the
wow.
models, the credentialing, U Academy, that, is going to, which is also launched, is going to be, I think it's going to be the next generation of business transformation initiative, that companies are going to learn about. And so that's my vision, to take the companies to that kind of level where they're thinking differently. There's a shift in their mindset, and they're preparing ahead of time for transformation and not scurrying, at the time, and then like, what do we do now? Something has happened.
Yes.
So a lot of this is going to be pioneering in the in the realm of business transformation. So I'm just so excited about it.
Wow. Like knowing you sort of like to, make this kind of vibe of loving your clients, helping your clients. It's like, it's very, you transmit this kind of, vibe. And looking at the people now, like if you take, like, if you go into space and look into how people are in corporates, or like what they say, helicopter view, and people are just waking up in the morning, life is monotonous. What is the kind of vision that you want to throw over them, that you see happening for them, the change they're going to be experiencing before and after they meet you?
I think that what people are going to find out very, very quickly about me is that I want to have true, transparent, solid relationships. And that would mean even in my business.
Yeah.
It means the trust equity has to be pretty high.
Mhm.
Whether that's with my employee or whether that's with a client, right? That has to be established. And that takes time. So, for example, the person that is come back to work for me at the moment, I brought her on very recently because it's going to get busy. And so I'm all about preparation. And this girl, when I was launching my book, came online with me. And at the time, she didn't have any children, but then she had her first baby, was working with me until then, went off, then came back after she had a second baby. And then she's had her third baby and she's back with me for UImproved. So I think that that says a lot about who I am and about the opportunities. And she's a busy mom. She has kids, 3 kids under 6,
Ooh.
but the way that we work, of course, she's online. She works in, we work in, she is in Ontario, but in a different city, about an hour and a half away from me. But the way that we work, that flexibility, I am 100% sure that I am going to have a 4-day work week in my company. It's definitely
Wow.
going to be a 4-day work week. You put in as much as you want, and then, you're going to take your Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
Oh, wow.
off. The other thing I would really, really love to do is give unlimited time off. I don't want to put a cap on it. I would expect that, again, it's about boundaries. So managing expectations, managing boundaries. But I think that self autonomy is so is really, really where companies should be moving right now. As you look at, you think about project management, you talk about, agile and, high performing teams that are autonomous, right? And they're doing what they have to do. They know what they have to do. They have their goals. So working with, with potential in the future employees, taking the time. My HR person is going to have to be a rock star because I would want her to really, and hopefully, I would ensure that, she likes what she does, right? And that she's the first ambassador and the representative of UImproved. So that's going to be a key position, is the HR person, because that's the people champion of the company.
Yeah.
And, and I would take the time to invest in each and every person. I am hoping that even if we get large enough, that culture, that servanthood culture, it's going to be, at some point, like, I could be involved in the last interviews, but at some point I might not be able to, right? So the challenge is, how do I keep that consistent? How do I keep that DNA of generosity, of trust, equity, of employee engagement? How do I keep that? I'm sure there are lots of others. I'm not the first person, but that is going to be, probably the challenge. I believe that if you, really show trust to people, and you choose the right people, you ask the right questions, as we've talked about, though, you can get people on, and they will get sold out for you.